Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we've got the irresistible force, Josh Hardbody.
And the immovable object, Diamond Steve.
What's harder than Diamond?
Nothing.
What are we talking about this week, Steve?
What are we talking about? Probably something that we probably should have started with, if you ask me. Something that we probably all grew up watching without us even knowing we were watching it back in the 90s. But when did it actually start? We're going to be talking about the Monday Night Wars. Hit him with it, Hardbody.
Well, I feel like the Monday Night Wars started when Hogan jumps ship from the WWE, WWF in 1993, and by 1994, he's coming off of Thunder in Paradise, and he's showing up on WCW Saturday night.
Why do you think he shows up on WCW after refusing, not refusing, but after saying he's done with wrestling?
Well, because he didn't make as much money as he thought he was going to in movies because nobody wanted to sign him.
But he was going to Hollywood. You didn't think he was going to make it? I saw Suburban Commando as a kid. I saw Mr. Nanny. And as a child, those movies are outstanding. As an adult, they're pretty terrible. Christopher Lloyd couldn't even save Suburban Commando.
No, and the only good movie that Hogan's in is Rocky III. I'm coming for you, Stallion.
Rocky III, Thunderlips.
That's right, the ultimate male.
Meets the ultimate meatball.
What a great movie. But he does Thunder in Paradise. It comes on TNT, and it's an awful show. And Hogan's got to see the writing on the wall, and he's got Billionaire Ted right there.
Well, you know, when you show up and you got a guy like Flair making your introductions, and then a guy like Bischoff who has the pocketbook of Billionaire Ted, who can just do whatever he wants. And actually, let's correct this. I'm pretty sure Billionaire Ted's not right. Isn't it Trillionaire Ted?
Oh, I don't know. He's got a lot of money.
I know he's got a lot of money, but we're not 100% sure here. You know, Ted, holler at your boy. I hear you're still living it up. But no, so you got him coming in, and you got Bischoff pretty much offering Hogan the golden goose. You know what I mean? Like, not only is he getting probably like a multi-million-dollar contract, but there's one little clause in that contract that would probably make any professional wrestler jump at it.
Creative control.
Yeah, and we can sit here and talk about the creative control stuff a little bit later when we get further deep into the Monday Night Wars. But let's talk about Hogan going into WCW in '94. What do you feel like they were doing differently than they did with Hogan in the '80s and the early '90s of WWF?
Well, they weren't doing a whole lot different with Hogan than the WWE did in the '80s, because what the WWE did in the '80s is they built up a heel, big monster, to feed him to Hogan, and Hogan would beat him. Rinse, wash, and repeat. It happened over and over again. And once he gets in WCW, they're doing the same thing. But something happened to the WWE in between. Hogan started to get stale with the audience. Vince started to get away from him a little bit. Is it the steroids? Is it the audience? What is it? Do you think that made Vince get away?
Oh no! If you ask me, it has to be the audience. The steroid thing doesn't come in until, you got to think about it. That doesn't take place till '93, '94. So Vince isn't on trial till '93, '94ish. Hogan's already out of the company. Hogan's first stab at Vince McMahon is coming in and being like, you know, I took steroids and the doctor at WWF gave it to me, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. Vince can't get charged for that because Vince's story is he had no idea that the doctor was being like, take these to look bigger. Hulkamania everywhere.
And that's what Hogan says. Hogan says, yes, I took steroids. No, Vince didn't tell me to.
Yes, but the whole time is Vince is sitting here saying that no one took steroids, which... Can we go back and watch the 80s? And let's just name 10 Wardy Magoos right now, just for the hell's bells of it.
Oh, you got Davey Boy Smith, Warlord.
Hercules.
Yeah, Hercules Hernandez, the Road Warriors.
Yeah, all Wardy Magoos. Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, I don't care what you say. The Warrior, there's no way in hell that is all natural.
No, it's an unnatural physique.
So then we got to go into the WCW time frame with Hogan. And what is the one thing you remember from that time period before Monday Nitro with Hogan in WCW?
Oh, Hogan versus the Dungeon of Doom and Kevin Sullivan. Oh, it's terrible. And even before that, it's Hogan and Flair, the matchup we never got in the WWE.
Okay, well, that's the first thing you get. When Hogan first signs his contract, it is already billed that he is going into Bash at the Beach against Ric Flair, and he's bringing all of his Hollywood friends with him. He's got his Shaquille O'Neal's with him, Mr. T's with him, all these people that were with him in WWF. Well, not really Shaq. Shaq wasn't around back in the 80s.
But he's over, Daddy.
Oh, yeah, he's totally over. I mean, nobody can deny Shaq was playing ball. And this is like Orlando Shaq.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Shaq.
Like, this is young Shaq, who probably still couldn't shoot a free throw, but You weren't getting the ball past him.
Hey, that's all right. My boy Hakeem made him look like a chump.
Ooh, you are correct, Amundo.
That did happen. But anyway, there's one guy in that entourage that never really made sense to me in that early WCW run with Hogan is Jimmy Hart. He's a heel manager. What's he doing with Hogan?
I mean, he was with Hogan in '93 at WrestleMania 9.
I know, right?
But in '93, Jimmy Hart started to be with Hogan for some reason. Jimmy Hart was writing the songs. Jimmy Hart was saying the lyrics to Hogan's WCW song at WrestleMania 9. Actually, no, correction. At King of the Ring '93 when he drops the belt to Yoko. In Dayton, Ohio. Heartland
That's
of
right.
the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you sit here and you got Hogan that comes into WCW. Do you think it's going to be the same thing over again? How long do you think it can last? Do you think maybe because he's been gone for a year, and now that he's in a new territory, technically, it's going to be better, worse, in between? What do you think?
I'll start with me as a kid. Me as a kid, I'm super excited because I'm a little Hulkamaniac. I got my Hulk Hogan wrestling buddy. I'm dropping the big leg on him. I'm eating my Wheaties. I'm buckling my seatbelt. I'm saying my prayers. I'm taking my vitamins. And I'm super stoked. As an adult, I look at this move and I look at WCW and they're not even... They're number 2, but it's a way distant number 2.
Okay, but here's the question. Are they number 2 because of this? Are they number 2 because there's really nothing else on TV?
They're number 2 because there's nothing else on TV.
Exactly. WCW and WWF are the only things you can find on national television at the time. You still had some remnants of the territories.
Yeah, USWA.
Yeah. You still had Jim Cornette doing his thing. You still had some of these guys around the United States doing their thing. But here's the thing. They were only on local television.
Yeah.
So if you weren't in the area, you weren't seeing it. And no one's going to buy a tape to something that they don't know anything about. You can sit here and talk about this stuff all day. We can sit here and have a 2-hour-long conversation about it. But it's this... The fact of the matter is WWF was number 1, without bad as they were at the time, to WCW being number 2, and Hogan not really helping them become number 1. Because all they're doing is replacing... They're putting someone where they could put a new guy, a new fresh face, but they're giving you an old WWF guy. What do you think about that?
They don't really have a lot going for them in WCW in that time period. They've got the Four Horsemen, which is great. They've got Sting, and that's about it, because Luger's not even there yet. Macho's not there yet. They haven't started building these newer stars like Jericho and Malenko.
Oh, none of them are there yet.
Yeah, they're not. Nobody's there.
No one's there yet. Jericho's not there. Jericho's still in... I think Jericho's still too young to wrestle at this point. But in 95, 96 time era, he goes to New Japan...
And ECW.
And ECW and does his thing. And then by 97, we're seeing Jericho come in, the Lionheart. You know, yeah, baby, let's go get him. You know, blah, 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 blah. And you're not really caring about him. He's just another guy that you watch flip on his head and all that. You remember that horrible Hurricane Rana?
Yeah, and he nexed himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, against Rey Mysterio.
Yes. So, okay. So we got the Legion of Doom. Or the Dungeon of Doom. Dungeon of Doom. And so we got the Man with No Name.
Yep.
You got the Shark.
Yep.
You got the Giant.
Yep.
You got Kamala. You got Ming the Barbarian.
Ming and the Barbarian.
Yes. With the golden thumb. The spike.
Hey, I'm a big fan of Hot
Kevin Sullivan.
Yep.
Vader at one point. The Yeti.
Yep.
And this lasts about a year and a half. This whole we're going to destroy Hulkamania thing.
And they go as far as teaming up with the Four Horsemen.
Yes, that's right.
The Alliance to destroy Hulkamania.
And then the person that comes in around this time, who comes in to help Hogan, is Macho Man.
The Macho Man! Snap into a Slim Jim.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot one more prominent member to the Legion of Doom.
Oh, who is it?
With the Dungeon of Doom, sorry. Lex Luger. Doesn't make much sense, does it? But he was a member.
Yeah, that happened.
You know why? Because Luger can't decide if he wants to be face or heel longer than a week.
Nope.
So we go into this program, and you have all this stuff going on with Hogan. I feel like as a fan back then, watching it, even as a child, I'm like, I love Hogan, but man, I wish they would do something different. Something just completely off the wall, because all this is the same stuff. The Dungeon of Doom was just throwing guy after guy at him. Who was that big guy? The Loch Ness? The guy who, the really fat guy. Who
like the Loch Ness
the Loch Ness monster or something like that. And he was just really a big white hillbilly that his teeth looked like he had done more meth than anyone could have in their entire life.
I love Kevin Sullivan, and I think Kevin Sullivan is great, but this cartoony Dungeon of Doom gimmick just doesn't work. And you've got two horses with Ming and the Barbarian that end up getting themselves over as the faces of fear. But then you've got a literal shark, a literal Yeti, Kamala. Like, what are we doing? This is a complete cartoon stable, and it didn't work then, and it definitely doesn't work now.
How about yes? No? Yes. No. What about that guy? I forget what his name was. It said Leslie. What was his name in the Dungeon of Doom?
I think it's the Butcher.
No, it's not the Butcher. I'm talking about when he's the Zodiac.
Terrible, terrible.
Yes, when he first joins, and that was in the Three Faces of Fear.
Yeah.
When he's the Butcher.
Yeah.
When he's the dude, like when they finally made him turn heel on Hogan instead of being Hogan's bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes in and he's got the face painted as the zebra face painted.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
the Zodiac. And he's like, yes, no, yes.
And it doesn't. The main idea of this is the product in WCW is bad, even with Hogan. Do they get some butts in the seat due to bringing Hogan in? Yes. Do they get some ratings due to getting Hogan in? Yes. But does it push them over any kind of hump to compete with the WWE? No.
No, not at this time period. No, it does not. So now we need to jump forward. Even when they first initially jumped to Monday Nitro, this storyline is still going on.
Yes.
And you have the first Monday Nitro,
Mm-hmm.
which is in the Mall of America.
Ooh, Minneapolis.
How many people on that card did you actually care about seeing? For me, it was Sting and Flair, because they're going to put on a 10 out of 10 match every
Yep.
time you watch them. The rest of the card I can do without.
Yeah, and that's about it. Then Luger comes out. That's pretty cool.
Luger comes out, and this is when you were a kid before, like I say again, before the internet. You didn't know anything better because you probably literally just saw this guy on a WWF Raw the weekend prior because they were taped.
Yeah.
And they weren't being live events and everything
Mm-hmm.
else. So then you have Luger that walks out, and you're just like, what the fuck is happening here?
Yeah, he doesn't even work
Yeah,
here.
he doesn't even work here. What's he doing here?
Yeah.
LOL, he clearly works here now.
yeah, definitely. But even that's not a big deal. So there's 2 Monday night shows, but the war hasn't started yet. When does the actual war start?
Well, the war starts the minute Nitro puts on. I mean, the minute WCW puts on Nitro.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be the start of the war.
Sure.
So the first episode of Nitro is when the war starts. Now, this war is very old and stale because at this time WWF isn't doing much either.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you got? You got Brett. Around this time, you got Michaels.
Yep.
You got the ringmaster. I don't even think you have the ringmaster yet.
No, he's still in
So you have-
ECW.
You have Brett. You have Shawn. You technically have Diesel and Razor still when the war
Yep.
technically starts. And then what else you got? You got
Yoko.
Yoko. Yeah, Yoko, because
Yep.
the first episode was in like 94. Yeah, 94.
Yeah, you
95.
got Yoko.
You got Owen, who's
Owen,
who's already the King of Hearts, who's the best Owen.
yeah.
In my
The
personal
Slammy
opinion.
Award winner.
Yeah, the 2-time Slammy Award winning Owen Hart. And honestly, I can't think of anything else because this is when you had like the New Age, and the New Age had a bunch of guys that you don't really think of anymore, like the Goon or
Yeah.
the Dumpster Dostry, whatever the hell his name was.
The dumpster, yeah, something like that.
So neither product is doing great things right now.
No.
Now, who changes that?
It doesn't change until we see Scott Hall come out on Nitro.
So after everything that's happened,
Mm-hmm.
WCW clearly calls Scott. Scott's like, yeah, sounds like a good deal. I'm going to make the jump. This is after, though, he goes and talks to Vince and goes, I don't want to leave,
Mm-hmm.
but I need more money. And I need more money. Let's just be
Yeah.
honest here. I need more money, and they're offering me this. They're offering me this many dates to actually work in a year, which is not the whole year like you have me doing now.
Yeah.
And so Scott jumps.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes to Kevin. Kevin's like, yo, I'm coming with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I always enjoyed listening to Kevin Nash's story. And maybe this is a sign of the times for Vince, because Vince has always had that one guy that he likes to stick with, and that's it. You know what I mean? When Vince's mind is made up, that's it. It's over. It's done. And we can honestly sit here and agree that Brett was the guy during this time in WWE.
Not Sean? Come on.
I mean, you gotta think about it. By this time, Sean is he's got a bunch of problems going on.
Yeah, but Sean's still the guy with the belt. He's the guy in the clique that does the curtain call and doesn't get punished.
Did he have the belt?
Mm-hmm.
Did he have the belt when they left?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay.
We could ask the Google machine, but I'm pretty confident he has the belt. So they do this clip curtain call, and all the marks get upset about it. So, oh, they're breaking kayfabe and blah blah blah. I remember hearing about it even then, and I didn't care. I didn't care that they did a curtain call. It wasn't a big deal that they come and hug in a house show. It's dumb.
No, it's stupid. We already know. But then again, the Attitude Era is until '97.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when the war really kicks off, and we'll get to that at some point or another. But is this after? When did Shawn win the belt?
He wins the belt at WrestleMania. The boyhood dream comes true.
But I thought that we looked it up last time, and they were already gone by the time that happened.
Oh, you might be right.
Because that's 96. 95 is WrestleMania 11. 96 is WrestleMania 12. Oh, you might be right.
Yeah, 96 is the NWO. This is all going on at the same time. And even if Shawn doesn't have the belt, he's getting primed for the belt.
Yeah. Hold on. Let's look this up real fast. Fans, if you will hold fast with us, Josh Hardbody is going to tell a tidbit tale while I look this up.
Well, my favorite WCW memory has got to be Abdullah the Butcher getting electrocuted in the steel cage. Like, that's the type of product that WCW's got going on while before Hogan comes in. I mean, they've got absolutely nobody. Ric Flair's not there. The Four Horsemen is the only good gimmick that they've got, and it's not great. So let's see when Shawn won that belt the first time, 1996. So there you go.
You got the click, 1996. After teasing retirement, Michaels returns. Blah blah blah. WrestleMania 12. Okay, so yeah. So WrestleMania 12, he wins the title from Brett in that Iron Man match.
Mm-hmm. The boyhood dream came true.
The boyhood dream comes true. Then they do the curtain call,
mm-hmm.
and his buddies leave.
Yep.
And you have him and Hunter, who are left.
Yep.
Because Little Bitch is already gone. He's doing like rehab or something.
Yeah, nobody cares about Sean Waltman.
I mean, I cared about Sean Waltman when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was a 1, 2, 3 kid, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't act like you weren't.
No, I definitely wasn't. I liked Razor, and I thought it was dumb that he beat Razor on Raw.
Oh no, I was a Mark. Can't help it. So then you have WWF still doing this stuff, and you have them doing a little bit smaller shows for Raw. Like they're in like bingo halls with like the little what's that little New York Center? Yeah, they're not in Madison Square Garden. Yeah. They're in like that New York City center that I'm not 100%
and like
sure
the Hammerstein Ballroom and all that.
Yeah. And you have the I Lost My Smile. This is like one of the biggest things that happened in WWF during this time, if you ask me. This is before DX. This is before the Attitude Era. But Shawn comes out and drops the title and says, I lost my smile. And, he apparently had knee surgery. And you hear a bunch of guys talk about it. And they don't really believe he needed knee surgery because he's coming out every so often and doing like flips and stuff.
Yeah, he was just a pillhead.
Yeah. So then you have this long overdue. So you have the debut of Scott Hall.
Yep.
Who clearly mentions... he comes out and talks about you know who I am, you don't know why I'm here.
Yep.
Yada yada yada.
He's got a big surprise coming.
Yeah, you got a big surprise coming, which we can only think of being someone from WWF.
Yeah.
And clearly it's Nash because we haven't seen Nash on television in like 2 or 3 weeks.
As a kid, I was completely shocked to see Kevin come out. I was completely shocked and completely excited.
Well, you had to get excited because this was when WCW was like, all right, we know we got Hogan. But now we're taking talent that was just getting over.
Yes.
That's still hot. These are younger guys that we can move up the card and do more things with. Because you guys think about it, at this time, I would have to say maybe they're 30. Maybe. Paul and Nash. Maybe 30.
And
which
Hogan's
is still
40.
young. Hogan's 40.
Macho's 40. They're all older guys. Yeah, they can still draw money, but the time period that they're going to be able to draw money is getting shorter and shorter. Whereas Paul and Nash are in their prime money drawing time period.
All right, so I know we already talked about this, but let's talk about when the Monday Night War takes the full. Let's talk about when WCW says, "LOL, here's the first shot." Bash at the Beach, 1996.
Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite pay-per-views, where we're all talking about who the third man is. Everybody in the playground's like, "Who's it going to be? Is it Luger? Is it Sting? Is Brett going to come out?"
Could it be Michaels?
Maybe, but I remember talking about that at the time. However, it wouldn't make sense because Michaels had the belt and all that. Vince
He didn't
was
have the
gonna
belt.
let him go.
He's already gone. He's done his. I wish I lost my smile.
Oh, that's the thing. That would have been really smart. To
Yeah,
do,
I'm pretty
to do
sure he
Michaels.
already did the I lost my smile thing before Bash at the Beach and was gone. So for all you know, that could have been a way for them to write him off television. But then again, Vince is smart enough. This is before Vince Russo writing Jeff Jarrett to win the IC title, even though his contract is ending.
Yeah.
Like Vince wouldn't have allowed Shawn to win the title if he knew that his contract was coming up and didn't have any intention of renewing his contract.
No.
So, you sit here and you have the Bash at the Beach, and obviously we already know this. We already talked about it. Who's the third man? It's got to be Luger. It's got to be whatever. It's Hogan.
Yeah.
And this is when WCW takes a shot in the arm and just goes full adrenaline. We're doing something completely different. We're going to have these guys come out of it. Like, they were literally assaulting the roster every Monday night.
Well, WCW did the unthinkable. They turned Hulk Hogan heel. And you can hear it in the crowd when he drops the leg. You can hear it with the announcers. You can hear it with Mean Gene. You see the heat. You see the trash literally being thrown in the ring as he cuts the promo after he turns on WCW.
Oh, quick tidbit. I would like to say that the last time we talked about this was during our first episode, and I would have to say, Hardbody, you are correct. I rewatched it, and you were right. He totally gives it away. Mm-hmm. Bobby the Brain Heenan goes, yeah, but whose side is he on? And then I think it's Dusty who goes, go get him, Hulkster. Yes. And I was confused.
Yes.
And then also Tony Schiavone's like, what do you mean whose side is he on? That's insane to say that. And then obviously we get the history making moment where the NWO is formed.
And then Heenan, after he drops the big leg, he says, "I've been saying this about Hogan for years."
Yeah,
and
it's
the
perfect.
best.
It's perfect.
Really good.
So then you have the NWO. So now the war has officially started. If you ask me, like the war started when the first Nitro came out, but this is the first time when Vince McMahon has to be sitting in his office going, "Well, I think we got problems."
And not only has the war started, it's pretty lopsided. Because I'm tuning in to Nitro primarily in that time period. After Hogan drops the leg, this is my show.
Oh yeah, so it turns into me watching WCW till the commercial break, and then going to Raw, and seeing what's happening, and then going to WCW the minute the commercials come back.
Every time.
I was a kid in my house where my dad would be watching Raw, and I would have Nitro on in my room, because luckily we were financial enough to have two TVs. I know not everyone did. But we had a TV in my room, he had a TV in the living room, and we would sit there and watch it. And I would go out to the living room. Actually, I don't even think I'd flip the channel for Nitro. I'd just go out to the living room and be like, what's happening on Raw, Dad? And he would go yada, 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 yada. And I'd be like, that's boring. And I'd go back to Nitro.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff happened that nobody cared about.
Yeah,
I'm ready for the NWO.
Yeah, I'm ready for the NWO. I'm ready for Hogan to come out and just beat people and then spray paint them. That's what you were waiting for. So when you first have the NWO form, it's obvious, even though they were heels, the first faction that's going to go up against the NWO is the Four Horsemen. They're automatically going to get a face turn.
Yes. Because
NWO is now the new big bad group. And they're the ones that are like, we're going to destroy WCW. The Four Horsemen may have been a lot of things, but they never wanted to destroy WCW. They just wanted to control WCW.
Yes.
So they're going to be the faces in this group. Or in this storyline. And you got Flair, and you got Arn and Mongo at the time, and I think Benoit?
I think Benoit's in there now.
Benoit's in there, or was it? No, because Pillman was in there during the Dungeon of Doom.
Yes.
And Booker Man.
Yeah. Pillman,
you win, Booker Man. I respect you.
Pillman started doing the ECW stuff around that time.
Yeah, he was in ECW with the cane and coming out and talking, crap about Eric Bischoff and everything else. So then you have the NWO going on. What's going on in WWF?
Not a whole lot. I couldn't even tell you what was going on at the WWF in that time period.
I can tell you what was going on.
I'm listening.
Razor and Diesel.
Oh, the fake Diesel and fake Razor. I remember being super hype about that. I was like, is Scott Hall and Kevin Nash going back? Like, what's happening?
What is going on here? And then you got Jim Ross trying to do a heel gimmick, talking about, see, it's them. We own the names, the copyrights.
Oh, super terrible. But hey, Glenn Jacobs, Kane, actually worked pretty well as
Actually,
Diesel.
It was really good as Diesel, I thought. If you would have called that dude anything else, I would have sat there and watched him on a weekly basis, because he he was good. He could work. Glenn Jacobs can work.
Yes.
He is a big man who can work, and it's a very rare talent to find that. Like Taker can work back in the day, and even if you got him doing the zombie Taker or something like that, it still worked, and he could still work.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and Taker's one of those weird guys that had his best matches much later in his career once he went over to the American Badass gimmick. But that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah. And so WWF doesn't have much going on right now. WWF has Brett now as the champion again, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, that he doesn't. At this moment in time, I do believe Sid is the champion. Because going into WrestleMania 13, it was Sid and Taker for the championship.
Yes.
And that's where Taker gets his second rub as champion.
Mm-hmm.
And Brett is fighting Austin.
Yes.
So would you say WrestleMania 13 is the pivotal moment where we see Austin come into his own against Brett?
It's pivotal for the WWE because that's the moment that starts the making of Austin. That without that I Quit match, where Austin passes out in the pool of his own blood, you can't get the rest of it. And it really, really, really worked. And they do the great double turn during the match, and it's wrestling done at its best.
No, so what year was Austin's King of the Ring? When he cuts the iconic promo. King of the Ring 96.
Yeah, it was 96 or 97.
Because the Warrior came back and Jake the Snake was there. And alright, so here's the card for 96, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shawn Michaels is champion and he beats British the Bulldog in the main event.
Yep.
Austin goes the distance and defeats Jake Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
Ahmed defeats Goldust for the Intercontinental Championship. Mankind defeats Undertaker in just a singles match. And Ultimate Warrior defeated Jerry Lawler. LOL, no one cares. The Smoking Guns champions with Sonny defeat the Godwins. No one cares. And then you have the other matches, which aren't believable to me, right? So you have Jake Roberts versus Vader.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake wins by disqualification.
Yeah, because he gets hurt and
Yeah,
does all
because
the
Vader
the
beats him
gimmick and
so
all
much.
that.
I just don't know what WWF's problem was with Vader. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you get where I'm going with this?
Well, I know what Vince's problem with Vader is. It's because he didn't make him. Vader made himself in Japan, and then made himself in WCW, where he's coming out with the big metal mask and smoke coming out of it, and it's really good stuff. And before that, he gets crapped on by WCW before he goes to the WWF with Jim Cornette, where Hogan.
Okay, so
beats Vader.
I'm gonna have to sit here and replay some stuff real fast in my head. All right, so '96 is when we see the birth of Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's no longer coming out with the $1 Million Man.
Nope.
Obviously, because he's already jumped and he's the financial backer of the NWO.
Yep.
Doing the finger count thing in the audience, so you're not dumb. If you're dumb, you're dumb. But if,
Yeah.
if you're not a dumb guy, you're like, okay, he's obviously here to join the NWO,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the fourth guy, which makes sense. Ted DiBiase is a very well-known WWF guy, so
Mhm.
it makes sense for him to come over and do that. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
and be a mouthpiece.
Yeah, be a
extra
mouthpiece,
guy.
be the guy, be the financial backer. You're not calling him the $1 Million Man. I think they were calling him. I think they were
he was
making.
DiBiase.
He was Ted DiBiase, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to call him the $1 Million Man.
No,
I think they called him Billionaire. I think that's where we get the nickname Billionaire Ted from.
That's probably what it was.
Because I believe that's what they were calling him.
Yeah.
Um,
And that VK Wall Street, Mike
yeah,
Rotunda.
yeah, like all these different play on what they were in WWF. Like
Yeah.
you had Vincent, who was
Virgil. Yeah.
in WWF, and he's a very sad man now. So WrestleMania 13 is 1997.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a year into the NWO. The WWF is getting beaten at this point
Mhm.
at WrestleMania 13. Now let me read you this card and tell me if it helps at all.
Sure.
Billy Gunn defeat Flash Funk.
No.
The Headbangers defeated Doug Fumis and Phil LaFleon, the Godwins, with Hillbilly Jim and the New Blackjacks.
Yeah. No,
Blackjack Bradshaw and Blackjack Windham. I don't
Mhm.
even know who Windham is.
I don't know. It's probably
Rocky
Barry Windham.
Maivia defeated the Sultan.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Goldust, and at this time he had China.
Mhm.
This is when you saw China just like ragdogging Merlina all the time. Love this tag team. Owen Hart and the British Bulldog defeat Mankind and Vader for the championships.
Mm-hmm.
Bret Hart defeats Stone Cold Steve Austin with special guest referee Ken Shamrock. Ahmed Johnson and the Legion of Doom. This is their match before the main event. defeated the Nation of Domination, Farouk, Crush, and Savio Vega.
But what the WWE has is the makings of some really good stuff. Yeah, Billy Gunn and Flash Funk, that's not a matchup that I'm super excited about. However, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg grow into something really special. Rocky Maivia becomes The Rock. Triple H with DX. Dustin Rhodes is a great worker and has a ton of charisma. Owen Hart's great. The Bulldog's great. Mankind's ends up being a huge draw. Bret Hart and Austin with the great submission match. The Nation of Domination, they do the whole faction warfare programs. And Taker as well. He's Taker.
Taker versus Sid, and Taker defeats Sid in a no disqualification match for the WWF Championship.
Mm-hmm.
With this kind of going back to where I believe, no, this is after this, Bret pins Taker.
Mm-hmm.
A couple months later, because Shawn is going to hit Bret with the chair and accidentally hits Taker in a no disqualification match and has to count to 3. And that's where Taker's hatred for Shawn comes into play. And this is slowly before the screw job.
Mm-hmm.
And the screw job is in 97.
Yeah.
The screw job is at... What is that at?
It's the Montreal screw job.
No, I know it's at Montreal, but I'm trying to remember what pay-per-view.
It's, the Survivor Series.
Survivor Series. And do you think Bret is completely to blame for all this?
Yeah, Bret's a complete mark for himself, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're a wrestler trying to get yourself over, but he's got to do business as well. Bret's leaving, and he just doesn't want to lose the title in front of a Montreal crowd. Come on, man. You're not even French Canadian. What are you doing?
Well, he doesn't want to lose it in front of a Montreal crowd, and he also doesn't want to drop it to Michaels. Let's be real.
That's too bad. Be the booker then, Bret. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, get in your contract that you can book some. But Vince would never give a talent that power. Vince doesn't really give anyone that creative control. And I mean, he still doesn't.
No.
I mean, you can clearly see it because, like, when Hogan comes back in 2002, he doesn't have creative control. Or I doubt he would let himself be dragged by a motorcycle by Taker.
Mm-hmm.
Which is hilarious, by the way, because it's not, you could tell it wasn't really hurting Hogan. And he's
Yeah.
perfectly, like, dressed to where when he gets dragged, nothing's going to happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, right now, we're a year into the NWO in WCW. How are you feeling about the NWO by 97?
Well, the NWO is running roughshod over the entirety of the WCW roster, but even me at the 12, 13-year-old mark, it's getting kind of old. Hogan's always got the belt. Isn't it time for somebody else to hold it? Even if it's somebody else in the NWO. What about Nash? What about Hall? What about Flair? What about who? Somebody else needs to carry this belt and be the face of this company other than Hogan. Hogan's getting stale, even with me in this time period.
Even after the change. In 97, a year after the heel turn.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if we're a full year in.
Mm-hmm.
But you gotta think about it, he had dropped the belt. He dropped it to Luger.
But every time you turned on the TV...
Every time you turn on the TV, yes. And Luger won the title and then lost the title.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. But if you look at it, there were a couple of title changes during it. Like Roddy Piper technically won the title, but technicality made it to where he didn't.
Yeah.
He beat Hogan, though, in the middle of the ring. Put Hogan to sleep. Because
it's a bunch of screw finishes and all that, and it's all bad. I don't know who's booking at that time period, if it's Dusty, if it's Kevin. It doesn't really matter at that point. Their booking is starting not to make any sense.
But when you're booking something and you have a guy who's not really... I don't ever believe that Eric Bischoff is wrestling savvy. Like, he's a great announcer. He's a great play-by-play guy.
Sure.
But do you think he was the guy that you should have put in charge of your company?
No, and we see it with the NWO. So you start the NWO storyline where it's Hogan, and then they're running roughshod over all of WCW. And what do you do next? And they never got to that. Here's the NWO, and this is what's next. It's always, we're just going to do more NWO stuff. Then we're going to do even more NWO stuff. Then we're going to do even more. And it doesn't really have an end to it. So how would you book the NWO and WCW? Where do you go with that story?
I mean, the storyline doesn't make much, like, with everything, you know, DX doesn't last.
Mm-hmm.
The Hart Foundation doesn't last.
Yeah.
Even if Brett had stayed and didn't get screwed in Montreal, I feel like the Hart Foundation wouldn't have been a thing that stayed together.
It can't, because everything in life, not just in wrestling, has a shelf life.
And the problem is, when they had their chance to do an NWO ending storyline, all they did was give you Wolfpack coming out with mass destruction.
And not only do they do that, then they bring it all back together again. And we're right back where we started.
Do you think the NWO was the saving grace and the downfall of WCW?
It's both. Without the NWO, WCW would have never even sniffed number one. And they were number one for a little while with the NWO. But it also is the death knell for the company.
You believe that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think WWF did to combat this?
Well, the WWF created new stars. It took them some time to create new stars, but they did. And through that creation of new stars and over time a better product, they were able to win that Monday Night War.
What do you think? But what's one of the things that stands out to you in WWF during the era of the Monday Night War?
Well, the Attitude Era, obviously, and what the Attitude Era is they see what Paul Heyman and ECW is doing, and they take that and tone it down a little bit and give it some more direction, and they create a really different, exciting product.
A really different, exciting product. So when we talk about Paul Heyman and what they're doing in ECW, do you think ECW needs to be added into the conversation for the Monday Night War?
They're definitely the third wheel in this conversation, but they're not competing effectively with the WCW and WWE. What they become is kind of like a farm system of talent, where they build up a big star and then one of the two bigger companies take that big star. Whether it's Taz, whether it's Mike Awesome, or the Dudleys, or Raven, or whoever it may be.
Well, WCW was doing that a lot before it got to where it was, because they were taking the luchadors from ECW. Fun fact, you saw the luchadors, most of all of them you saw in WCW and ECW first.
Yes.
You saw guys like Benoit and Dean Malenko. You saw Eddie Guerrero's. You saw Chris Jericho's. You saw
Hogan too.
You saw all these guys in ECW doing the same things they did, just without, like, you know, the chairs and the tables and things like that in WCW, which were still new, fresh, and interesting for me as a wrestler.
And what the WCW did, they would introduce these new things like the cruiserweights. You talked about Malenko and Guerrero, or the luchadors, and they introduce all this stuff, and it works, but they never push it to the forefront. It's always the first match on the card or an in the middle match. They're never building a new star. It's always the old stars, whether it's Luger, whether it's Macho, whether it's Hogan, Nash, Hall, whoever it may be. It's always the same guys on top, and they never push a new guy into that top spot unless we're talking about Bill Goldberg.
Goldberg, that's a guy to talk about, though.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guy who the only guy that you can honestly probably say was homegrown by WCW.
Yeah, and I'm a DDP mark, and I would love to say that he's this homegrown superstar, but he's not The Rock, he's not Austin, and he's not Mankind. He's a good star for WCW, whereas Bill Goldberg, this guy, he's on the cover of TV Guide.
That's debatable. DDP was on the cover of TV Guide as well. He was doing that.
Oh, the diamond.
Because the TV Guide at that point, and again, we're going off topic here, but a tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
The TV Guide did a wrestling month, and it was like, there was different covers, because my dad collected them all.
Oh,
he had
really?
like Goldberg, Hogan, DDP was on one, Austin, Rock, I think Mankind and Taker were on one, different things like that. And the fun thing about these TV Guides were they had little tidbits in there, where they told the truth, you know what I mean? Like, you knew that Undertaker and Kane were brothers on TV, but, you know, they weren't really brothers, obviously.
Yeah.
And, like, the TV Guide gave that away. Just different little things like that. My dad had them all. I don't know where they are now. But he had all those TV Guides, because he, you know, he liked the TV Guide. I was never a big fan of the TV Guide, obviously. But he had them all. The fun little fact. The Entertainment Weekly did like a month wrestling thing where they did all the companies, and they were all on the cover Like Goldberg, Hogan, Austin, Rock, they were like all in little circles on the cover talking about how wrestling is taking the world by mainstream or whatever.
Yeah, and wrestling during that time period is the biggest it's ever been and probably the biggest it's ever going to be.
It's the golden age of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be real here. The Monday Night War was just... But look what we had going on. Not only did you have WCW and WWF, but you had ECW in the background giving people what they kind of wanted as well, where it wasn't looking like more of a staged act and more just dudes hurting each other to win a match.
It was real.
Yeah.
They were beating each other up for real.
So we go back to WWF at the 97 time frame, probably more going into the 98 time frame when we start seeing more like, first blood matches and things like that. And these are obviously things you're taking from ECW. And by this point, Vince is smart enough to be like, all right, I'm going to start feeding ECW money, and I'm going to be the one that gets to take their talent when I feel like they're ready to come up. And that way, ECW became more of a developmental for WWE, because Vince was feeding him like $5,000 a month
to keep the company afloat.
Heyman.
Yeah.
And obviously ECW closes the doors in 2000. We obviously see a lot more ECW guys come into the company. You got your RVDs, you got your Rhinos, you got your Dudleys that come in, obviously, and they put on that stellar TLC match with two homegrown WWE talents, the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian. And this is where we start to see the difference between the two, right? So we start to see the difference between WWF and WCW. WWF had no choice, if you ask me.
They didn't.
But to build more talent and to put in the main frame or the main stage of their title picture.
And I want to give Vince credit where credit's due. Not only did he build new talent, he held older talent was able to reinvent themselves as well.
Who?
Taker.
Okay. Taker was able to reinvent himself, but Taker didn't really reinvent himself till after or like right before the war even ended.
I always found the Ministry Taker fundamentally
okay, so we're talking
different.
about that. Yes, that is. You got Taker out there putting people on Taker symbols, and crucifying them. It is magic.
Speaking of stolen from ECW, by the way.
The only difference is Raven put Sandman like on an actual cross, and then was doing like and then like I'm the hardcore Messiah or some shit.
And Kurt Angle's like, I want no.
Kurt Angle's like, I want nothing to do with this company. And you sit here and you watch this stuff as a child, or even as, it's not even say a child, even though we were kids back then, or as a fan, and you're getting something. You know what I mean? You're getting something. I remember watching WCW, and they talk about this, but I remember watching WCW and Tony Schiavone telling everyone that Mick Foley, also known as Cactus Jack when he wrestled for this company, is going to get their world championship tonight. I immediately changed the channel to watch Mankind beat The Rock. For the championship. Yeah,
that was WCW trying to be too smart for their own good.
Well, that's what they did it for years. You know what I mean? You listen to Eric Bischoff, he would talk just crap about everyone, even people that eventually came into WCW. Like he would say like Shawn Michaels beats the big guy with a kick that you wouldn't learn from your local YMCA. Stick it here, this is where the action is. Because it was pre-recorded. And it wasn't until 96, 97 when Vince started doing live Raws. When you started watching Raw every week to see what Austin would do to the boss until he got what he wanted. So you see what Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart had to say to each other. And let's just bring it up. One of the first ever promos that I feel like brought in the Attitude Era was when Shawn was like, I know you've had sunny days, Bret. And we all clearly know what he's talking about. Clearly hinting at the fact that Bret had an alleged affair with Sunny.
Which Sunny says didn't happen.
Sunny said didn't happen, that she just loves the kids, but we all know who Sunny is, and we can probably believe that it actually did happen. Bret also isn't squeaky clean.
And then Bret calls Hunter and Shawn a couple of degenerates.
Yeah, and that's becomes the G Generation X. And it's almost like it was organic in WWF, like a lot of the things that happened. Like Austin became a badass organically through that match, actually through the King of the Ring when he cuts the promo. Austin 3:16 says, I just whooped your ass.
Yeah.
And then even more so when he does that match with Bret and doesn't tap out, doesn't say I quit, and just passes out from pain.
Well, Austin was in the process of over 6 months to a year of getting himself over. And fans like me wanted a reason to cheer him, and that match gave us a reason.
Exactly. That match gave you a reason, and then you go to see him slowly start to get the prominence, and then you see the match at Montreal, where he gets dropped on his neck by Owen, and almost ruins the chances. Do you think if if Stone Cold was ruined that match, like could not wrestle ever again, do you think WWF would still be where they are?
Yes.
You really do believe that?
Because the WWF had more going on than just Austin. Austin was the face, but they were building new stars and they were making new storylines and fresh matchups where the WCW was not. Maybe the war goes a little longer, maybe WCW lasts past 2001, but at the end of the day, that company's doomed.
That company's doomed just because it doesn't, it's like you just said, it doesn't make new anything. The only thing, I remember watching the Goldberg-Hogan match because that was new and that was fresh.
Yeah.
I remember starting to buy pay-per-views because you were starting to see Goldberg versus other people. I clearly remember buying Halloween Havoc and then it getting cut off in the middle of it. Because I was excited to see DDP at least getting a chance to fight for the world title.
Oh man, and DDP hits him with the diamond cutter. And I'm so excited, but he kicks out at 2.
I know. But you also have these other homegrown talents in WCW that they just overlook. And you think maybe that was part of their problem?
Well, they have several talents that they overlook. In particular, all of the radicals that jumped over before the invasion angle. Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, Chris Benoit. And these are guys that Guerrero and Benoit became really big stars.
Yes, and then you have the biggest one, I think, was Jericho.
Yes.
And not only does WWF show the fact that they believe in Jericho, they let him come out and interrupt their biggest star at the time, The Rock.
Well, Vince saw what Jericho could do with the promos. In particular with that feud with Goldberg. All those great promos and all the funny spots in the back. And he's a guy that just never got a chance. And he was just begging to be a superstar. And Vince allowed him to do that, and he became the superstar.
Yes, and we all know that we can all sit here and watch old Jericho matches, and it's probably got to be a little bit of a tidbit of a not fiasco, but a little hard learning curve to come from a ring like WCW had. Because like we were talking about before the show, the WCW ring is slightly smaller than the WWF ring. And I particularly, I'm with you on that. It makes everyone look bigger. From Hall to Nash to even Hogan and Warrior. Like, they look bigger in the WCW ring. Well, that's obviously because it's smaller, but still, it looks bigger and better than they do in WWF. Because in WWF, you have to have a guy who's, like, pushing 7 foot to look like a true monster in a WWF ring.
Yes.
Like, even after a while, after watching Kane for so long, you're like, this guy's big, but he's not that big.
Yes.
Now, if you put him in a WCW ring,
he's a complete monster.
Yeah, he looks like a complete, utter monster, and it's just incredible. So then then we're going to sit here and talk about the fact of the downfall. Let's talk about the downfall of WCW.
Okay.
Where do you think that happened?
The money. The contracts. The guaranteed money.
Let's not talk about the guaranteed money. Let's not talk about the contracts. Let's talk about an event that I'm going to bring up that I think was the true starting point of the downfall
I'm definitely
of WCW.
listening. Okay.
I'm going to talk about a match that was on WCW Nitro.
Okay.
The night after they tased Goldberg with a stun gun to end the streak and lose the title, the Finger Poke of Doom.
Oh my goodness, what were they thinking?
The Finger Poke of Doom is clearly Kevin Nash and Hogan's way of being like, LOL, we're still in charge. Click. And you have the NWO get back together. It's clearly not as good as it was. It's not. Like, they're no longer getting cheered. Because at one point everyone booed the NWO, and then they started cheering the NWO, and now it's kind of like it was when Hogan in '93. It was kind of like, all right, we're tired of this. Can we do something else, please?
Yes.
Can we get on with the show? And we're not, though, because it's still the same thing. It's still the same guys. It's still the same stuff going on week after week after week. And WWF, though, on the other hand, is doing something different. They're having, like, Austin versus Taker that you haven't seen.
Yeah.
They're having Austin lose the title. Like, he held it for like if you look at it, Austin held the title for like 3 or 4 months and then lost it in some crooked ass way or another.
Yeah.
And then someone else would get the title. Let's talk about the 3 or 4 WrestleManias during the war, okay? So you got the 97 Mania, which is Austin bleeding.
Yeah.
Taker versus Sid, not that great. Then you got to go to WrestleMania 14, though. When you got the star power of Mike Tyson coming in beforehand. And that's one way. That's another thing I feel like WWE did right. Like they weren't trying to put these stars in the ring as WCW was trying to do with like your Karl Malones and your Dennis Rodmans and your Jay Leno's.
Yeah.
And then you got one of the other big things about WCW's downfall, which I'm sure we'll get to, is David Arquette winning the title. But you have Michaels versus Austin, and clearly Michaels is ready to go. Like he's got back problems. We're clearly going to put the belt on Austin, but we do this great build-up with Tyson beforehand, which is what Mania is all about, getting star power, getting people in there, seeing what they can do. But let's talk about WrestleMania 15. The first WrestleMania match, Austin versus The Rock. And we get 3 of them, and all 3 of them are perfect.
Yeah, I'm definitely a Rock guy. Once he got away from the Rocky Maivia gimmick and he does you say why, Rocky, why?
And I say, die, Rocky, die.
And then he does the Nation of Domination angle, where he ends up taking over the group. He gives Farouk the portrait of himself, of The Rock with the IC title. And it builds and builds, and he does the corporation thing. And then he does the people's elbow that's a total just mocking move, but because he's The Rock, it gets over, and we believe it.
It gets over. It's good. It's good on my television.
Yeah.
To what I'm seeing on WCW. That is the moment when all these dudes in WWF started cranking. Like DX showed up, Stone Cold Steve Austin shows up, Rocky joins the Nation. You got the corporation going on. You got the ministry going on. This is when my TV officially jumped from WCW to Monday Night Raw.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely tremendous what they've got going on. Meanwhile, in WCW, we've got more NWO stuff with the same guys doing the same things with the same screwy finishes.
But then, in WCW, we could talk about the fact of when they brought all the NWO back together, they clearly did realize one thing, that they had to get rid of some meat in the NWO. And that's when you had the A-Team and the B-Team. And the B team being your Virgils and your Conan Crush and Stevie Ray and all Norton and all these other cats. And then you have the A team, which is obviously your originals. And then Scott Steiner, Luger, Buff Bagwell for some reason, Scott Steiner, like all these different guys. And when was the last appearance of the original NWO? Was that 99, 98? When they officially ended it?
Because you've got to think around the 2000, 2001 time period, they're doing the Millionaires Club and the New Blood.
No, because in 2000 they bring the NWO back as the NWO 2000 with
Brett. Oh, you're right.
With Brett, Jeff, Nash, and Hall, and I think Scott's in there.
Yeah.
And they do that short run with him having the title, with Brett having the title, and there's no charisma whatsoever. You can tell that Brett's not happy in WCW at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the writing or if Brett's just so screwed over by Montreal that his heart's just not in the game anymore.
Well, a big topic that we missed is Starrcade 97, where you have the biggest feud of all time up to that point. Sting and Hogan. Sting's been in the rafters for a year. He's been beating people with baseball bats for a year. And then we have this match. And it's supposed to have a screwy finish, but it's not a screwy finish. Then Brett comes out and says, oh, I got screwed, and I'm not going to let that happen again. And it's just a complete farce.
I feel like that whole program was ruined. Why can't we just have a one-on-one match with Sting and Hogan, and that's it? Is it because Hogan didn't want to drop the belt to Sting? Is it the company not doing what they were supposed to do? Because you could have had Brett do anything.
He's a hot commodity.
Didn't have to come in and do this. He wasn't even part of that match. He was actually an enforcer in a previous match, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But then he comes out during this match, and he does the whole like, I got screwed, I'm not gonna let you get screwed, blah 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 blah. And then they go, well, he wasn't the real ref, so the match doesn't count. So.
And you hear Bischoff talk about it's because Sting's head wasn't in the game. He didn't have a tan, and I was like, what are you talking about, Eric?
Eric Bischoff can literally just go away. I don't need to hear from Eric Bischoff anymore. He's a guy who got one thing right, and that's it. That's all he got right was the NWO at the very beginning. Because everything else, he didn't care about anyone else but the NWO, or anyone else than WWF superstars. That's clearly it. He didn't care about the Juventutes, the Jerichos, the Disco Infernos, all these different guys that were talented. You could have repackaged Disco. The guy can wrestle.
Yeah.
If you think that he's not going to be able to go for a title because he's Disco Inferno, then okay, I get it. You know, whatever, fine. I get it. It's cool. But then you have the downfall of WCW even more when Eric Bischoff leaves and they hire a guy by the name of Vince Russo. And that's when you start seeing just utter ridiculousness every week you turn on Monday Nitro.
Well, when Vince Russo worked for Vince McMahon, he had a filter that Vince and Pat Patterson and guys like that could take Vince Russo's ideas and sanitize them. Take the good and do it and leave the bad out. When Vince Russo goes to WCW, it's just complete Jerry Springer all the time.
It's complete Jerry Springer, but then it's complete utter ridiculousness as well because you have like Judy Bagwell on a fucking forklift match. You have the obvious dudes that are friends with him getting pushed. Like, you never would have saw Jarrett as the champion without Russo there. I believe that. As good as Jeff Jarrett, I talk shit about Jeff Jarrett, but as good as he was in the ring, you would have never seen him with the title. You would have never seen these, like, what is it, Kurt Henning's doing like a cowboy group talking about rap is crap. Like, that just screams Vince Russo to me. It does not scream Kurt Hennig with creative control, which I don't think he had, but I don't see how it could be considered. You know what I mean? Like, Vince Russo was such a bad seed, and we can talk about this more in our next episode, because I feel like this is going to continue, because we still haven't even hit on a lot of the stuff in WWF during the Monday Night War, except for like little things here and there. We've mostly, we can call this episode the bashing of the NWO.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about the good, we talked about the bad, we talked about the in-between of the NWO. And that's but that's one of the biggest things you need to talk about during the Monday Night War, is the NWO.
And we've only got a couple minutes left here, so let's wrap a bow on this. Steve, what is the legacy of WCW?
The legacy of WCW is RoboCop in 1988.
Really? I mean,
no,
seriously.
I'm being serious. Okay, seriously, all seriousness, the legacy of the WCW to me is the NWO and a bunch of dudes having creative control power and a bunch of dudes that would get more money every time someone else came in, that they got paid more than them. And WCW built their own coffin when they did all this.
I definitely agree. WCW is at the same time everything good about wrestling and everything bad. That they were part of the biggest and best generation of wrestling, and then they just plain killed it. And then we didn't have any alternatives, and we got the WWE that we have today that we're just now trying to recover from.
We can't recover from it right now because WWE has no real competition. As much as the AEW mark I am, it's still not well known enough to take fans from WWE, I feel like. Like, in the 97, WCW was taking fans from WWE.
Yes.
Now, I can be wrong, but I feel like our generation of people who watch both these shows, they're not they either don't have time to watch two wrestling shows, even though they're on two different nights. At least AEW was smart enough not to sit here and try to start the Monday Night War over again.
It's not going to work.
It wouldn't have worked because too many people are just like, it's Monday night, I got to watch for WWE, and that's it. I hope that more people can watch AEW, and maybe eventually we will get a good product out of WWE, because I feel like WWE's product always changes when they have competition. Clearly, we haven't had that competition since 98, 99.
No.
When they started winning the Monday Night War. Because even after that, it slowly started slowing down. Slow down, slow down, slow down. And then it became, WWE almost started doing the same things like WCW did, and only cared about the actual dudes that had been around for a minute. Like the Triple H's, the Shawn Michaels, the Austins, the Rocks. Nowadays, you see it with like Brock and Goldberg and all these other cats that are coming in. Edge. Like, again, I say, just like I said in the last episode, I like Edge. I don't understand why he won the Rumble, though.
No.
When you have all this young talent that you could have pushed. That fans probably would want to see go for the championship. Even if they're not going to win. Give me that match at Mania.
Yeah, the fresh matchup.
Yes.
Let's make a new star. Let's do the things we did in the Attitude Era.
I get what they're doing, because they're going to put this seasoned guy like Edge against someone who hasn't wrestled Edge before. Because Edge, I don't know if you know this or not, a quick tidbit, he showed up on NXT and was like, I may just come after your belt because I've never had it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a cool story to tell. And we'll have to see how it goes, but I feel like it's going to be him and Roman to give Roman some legitimacy, because I'm pretty sure The Rock's not coming. But this is where we're going to have to cut it off today. I'm Diamond Steve.
And this is your boy, J. Johnny Hardbody.
We will see y'all in the next one, part 2 of the Monday Night War. Holla at your boys.